Hello, my name is Malachi Sayers, and I am here to show you how to use my plugin FEvent system triggers. So the first thing that you want to do once you have installed and enabled the plugin, this plugin is for 4.27. Yeah, 4.27. I do have an older version which is for 4.26. However, um, this one is much newer. I will be making a updated version to Unreal Engine 5, depending on um, if needed. So yeah. So make sure that you click this icon, which is at the top, um, in these panels here, and it will open up a window screen. Essentially, we have our event boxes here. It's a drop-down menu. Our VFX events, SFX events, and function events. So yeah. So these buttons allow you to refresh all of these drop-down boxes if need so. You do have a submit button that allows you to assign that particular event and or function to the particular event box. You have unbind current, so it just unbinds all of the functions that you have assigned or unassigned them. And we have unbind all, which just simply, unassign everything to all event boxes. Yeah. So to get started, I'm going to start by creating a trigger box. So I'm going to right click, blueprint class, and then FEventBox. I'm going to call this BP_event box trigger and open this. There's not really anything special about this. Yep. So essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure hidden in game is set to false because I want to see my trigger box. So I'm going to create 4 trigger boxes, right? There you go. So my first trigger box is going to change this color to black. My second trigger box is going to change this color to red. Third trigger box, I'm going to play a sound. And the fourth one, I'm just going to increment a counter on the screen. So as you can see here, it does shows us all our trigger boxes. However, I'm going to rename them. So change color. This is going to be change color to. This is going to be sound, and this is going to be count. There you go. And as you can see, it updates here. So let's create some functions and events. So a little bit more about this. So these are variables that stores U functions. And basically, we do have strings or text. Basically, it stores the name of the function. So we are able to uh, have that persist when you're opening up the engine. I do have a struct, and this is a trigger config. And what this allows us to do is set up how we want our trigger box to work. So this is an enum, and if I select SFX, it would only call functions, only call the SFX function. If I change this to functional, it will only call FUN functions, or whatever that is assigned here and or here. So I have begin overlap. So basically, if the player enters the collision box on the beginning of the collision, it will call the function, and overlap, it would only call the function when the player leaves or the pawn, and then begin and end overlap, the function would be called when the player overlaps, and then end overlap. I'm gonna leave it there. And then the tags is just there for certain, so the tags are there to allow you to have this trigger box to only trigger if a pawn and or actor have that tag. So yeah, I'm going to create a custom event, and I'm going to prefix it with VFX. So when you're creating your functions and or events, make sure that you prefix it with VFX underscore, SFX underscore, or FUN underscore. The reason why you would prefix it this way is because this is how the plugin knows which functions to, get from your object. So I'm gonna name this to change color red. And I'm gonna create another function or a function. Make sure that I prefix it with VFX. Change color black. So basically, for me to get a reference to this cube, I'm just going to create a variable, make it instance editable. So I'm able to change it. And create a variable, call this static mesh, make it instance editable, and then name this to be static mesh actor, and make sure it's an object type. So to change the color, I'm going to get a reference to my static mesh. I'm going to call set vector parameter. Basically, it needs a reference to the static mesh component. So for my parameter name, I'm going to change this to color. I don't feel like working with vectors when it comes to color, so I'm going to use 2linear_color. So 2vector linear color. And I'm going to change, well, it's already black, so there you go. I'm going to copy this and do the same thing for red. So copy and paste. Change my color from black to red. And as you can see here, we have created our function and event, and it's just a matter of assigning those functions to our event box. So as you can see here, I have black and red. So I'm going to make my first one to be black, hit submit, and then my second one to be red, and then hit submit. And when I hit the play button, oh yeah, I gotta make sure that I do assign my cube. I'm gonna name this to be cube color, so I don't get confused. There we go. Let's save it. Yeah, so this changed to black, this changed to red. Now for my sounds, I'm gonna make this trigger box play a sound. So I'm gonna prefix this with sfx underscore and then play sound. Now I'm going to play the sound when the player, collides with it, and then when the player collides with it again, stop the sound. So I'm going to add a flip-flop, create a sound, and I downloaded this piano sound. So yeah, and I'm just gonna use it. Make sure that you have auto destroy turned off. Well, I'm gonna have it off because I'm gonna manually destroy the object. And I'm gonna destroy the component with the B. So I created my sound, and then I'm going to play my sound, and then if the player calls this function again or this event, it will destroy the component, which will stop the sound. And to demonstrate that you can actually bind two functions for one trigger box, I'm going to select the sound. I'm gonna hit refresh. Just gonna reopen it really quick. There you go. So I can assign a VFX and a SFX. And as you can see here, this changes the color to red. However, I want the color to be, I want it to play a sound. I'm sorry. So I'm going to change this to be SFX, and it will call my SFX function or event. And there you go. So now for this trigger box, I am going to basically make a counter that counts from 0 to 50. What I've done here is I have set up our third person character. So basically I created a HUD, set it, add it to the viewport, and I have this function that allows you to increment the counter by however many value. So I'm going to make a custom event, and I'm going to call this FUN underscore count. So the way that I'm going to increment our counter on the screen, I'm simply just going to create a timer. So I set timer by event. I'm going to call this count. Make sure looping is checked, and then our time, it's going to be 0.1 second. I'm going to create an integer variable. I'm going to call this value. And the reason why I'm creating an integer variable is so I can keep track of our value. Oh yeah, before I show you this, I have created functions. I have created variables. And these variables allows you to get the overlap actor and get the other actor. So it's m other actor, and then you have m overlap actor. So I'm going to print these two things out. And for my first print string, I'm going to leave it as blue. And for my second print string, which is overlap actor, I'm going to change it to green. And when I hit play, I forgot to assign it. So I'm going to count functions, count, submit, and then make sure that I have this selected. And hit play. As you can see, it prints out my overlap actor and my other actor. And this is going to be very convenient for what we're about to do now. So the way that I'm going to call my function add to count, which is on my third person character, is I'm going to cast it. So I'm going to get a reference to my overlap, or to my other actor, and then cast this to third person character. So I'm just going to simply increment this. And I am going to call add to count. And change this to 1. I'm going to have a branch statement, and this branch statement just checking to see if the value is equal to 50. And if my value is equal to 50, I want to stop my timer. And as you can see here, the counter increments. There you go. And we can increment. However, it's just going to increment forever because we have an equal sign instead of a greater than. So I can change this and then greater than 49. And then now if we just increment by 1. But yeah. So basically we have our count, we have our VFX and SFX. So to demonstrate that we can have only certain actors and our pawns um, be able to call the function um, when overlapping with the trigger box. I am going to add a tag to our trigger box. So only actors or pawns with the tag player can only interact with this or only call can only call functions if they have the player tag. And as you can see, I don't have the player tag. My third person character don't have the player tag, so it cannot interact with these trigger boxes. And I can give my third person character the tag player. And now you can see they're able to interact with these trigger boxes. So I'm just going to remove the tag player. And then same thing with our event box. So let's say that you want to have multiple objects, right? So you can create another event trigger box, and I'm going to create a new one. FEvent trigger box, and I'm going to call this BP event box. Now, keep in mind, event box has no events, and I'm going to simply demonstrate this by showing you I'm going to make sure that I have hidden in game set to false because I want to see my collision. I'm going to rename this to change color cone because I'm going to be using it to change the cone color. And as you can see here, this particular trigger box have no functions. And the reason why this doesn't have any functions is that you can only bind functions to like objects to the same object, right? You can only bind functions to the same object. So change color, so we created two objects, right? So change color cone is a different object than change color. However, change color and change color 2 are two different instances of the same object, right? So different object will allow you to bind functions and or events to its own object. So I'm going to create another function, and this is going to be FEventBox. So custom event FEventBox change color. And I would need to do the same thing that I have done for that trigger box. So I'm going to create another variable, name this to static mesh. Make sure my type is of static mesh actor. Make sure it's object reference, make it instance editable, and hit compile. So I'm going to get a reference to my static mesh variable, and then get a reference to static. Well, actually, I'm just going to do set vector parameter value on material. I'm going to change the parameter name to be color. And since I don't feel like working with vectors for colors, I'm going to convert that to a 2-vector linear color. And let's color this to be pink. There we go. So I'm going to select our event box. I'm just gonna reopen this. Change this to change color. Hit submit. I'll do an overlap. So when I collide and then an overlap, as you can see, I forgot to set my object reference. There you go. And as you can see, when I end overlap, the color changes. And this is independent of this trigger box, this one, and this one. And I can also have different trigger boxes on different levels. I have created this level, and as you can see, there is no current event boxes or VFX or SFX or function events. and I'm able to select one of my trigger boxes, rename it to anything that I want. I'm able to select it. I'm actually just gonna reopen this. I'm gonna select it, select the function, hit submit, and to humor you, there you go. And I can go back to the other level, and all my changes has persist. I'm not gonna play this sound, but yeah. And I can close out of the editor, as you see here. And reopen up my project. And my editor open. I can hit play, and all my changes are still here. And yeah. This concludes my plugin. Thank you for watching.